minutes. So everyone, good afternoon. We are still waiting for a couple other members of the media to attend, but we are trust that they will be here shortly and be able to be part of this important discussion. So once again, good afternoon. And I would like to thank everyone for joining us here today. My name is Brenda Carrot. I'm the co-owner of Cheetah Communications and Business Solutions, along with my business partner, Adlai Carrot. Cheetah is hosting this important press conference, launching a very important and timely project, Pathways to Addressing Child Rights and Child Abuse in Antigua and Barbuda, on behalf of its client, a consortium comprising Decides AB, Integrated Health Outreach, IHO, Social and Environmental Alliance, SEA, and the Christian Union Church, CUC. The project seeks to highlight child rights and what they are, child abuse, which occurs when child rights are disregarded or simply not known, and the impact of child abuse, which is an aberration of child rights on the health and wellness of persons, even into adulthood. Without a doubt, the issue of child abuse is a pervasive one and a concerning one, spanning physical, emotional, and sexual abuse to neglect and child exploitation in various forms. Everyone needs to play their part in reducing and eliminating this scourge from Antigua and Barbuda. A situational analysis of children in Antigua and Barbuda, published in 2015, recorded 691 cases of child abuse between the years 2010 and 2013. And this, as you know, has been a few years ago. We don't know what the statistics are today, but one of the things that we certainly do know is that in many instances of child abuse and child neglect, the cases are not recorded. So I will not go on any further. I think it's now time for us to introduce our panelists and what each will be doing. We first have on hand Nurse Alexandrina Wong, who represents Decides AB and Women Against Rape, War. And she will be speaking as to why this project was chosen by her NGO and its critical importance to Antigua and Barbuda. Then we have Dr. Nicola Bird, who is the Executive Director, Integrated Health Outreach, IHO, and Project Manager of this very important initiative. She will discuss who the key partners are, the areas of focus of this particular project, what has been done so far, and what the next steps are. Fiona Charles Richards, who is the Acting Director, Family and Social Services Division, Ministry of Social Transformation, Human Resource Development, and the Blue Economy. Fiona will discuss, give an assessment of child rights and child abuse in Antigua and Barbuda. We also have on hand Pastor Karen Germain of the Christian Union Church, and she's also a counselor. She has experience in schools and social groups, and she'll be talking about those as they relate to child rights and child abuse. Each panelist, I'm asking that you try to be no more than 5 minutes. And at the end of the presentation, the floor will be opened to the press. When the questioning by the press is concluded, Adlai Carrot will give very brief concluding remarks. So I will open the session now with our panelists, who will be Nurse Alexandrina Wong. If you could give an overview of the project, explain why it was chosen and why you think it's important, so critically important to Antigua and Barbuda.
Thank you, Madam Moderator. Good afternoon to everyone present on this discussion, very important discussion this afternoon. Alexandrina Wong, I am the Director of Women Against Rape, Executive Director of Women Against Rape, and we are the implementing partner for the Decides AB project, The city's AB is one of the many projects that is being implemented by INTERARTS. So who is INTERARTS? INTERARTS is a foundation based in Spain. Their motto is sowing culture and reaping progress. They are a private agency and they contribute to human development through culture by supporting design of cultural policies and promoting knowledge and information in the field of culture. They also advocate for the role of culture in public governance, networks in Europe, and international levels. So why is this project being done at this time? Our moderator would have given some statistics from a situation analysis that was done in Antigua and Barbuda through UNICEF in 2015. I would like to follow through with some further discussions because that situation analysis was very revealing at that time. Hence, the need for us to move forward with gathering information in a professional and ethical manner so that this project that's being run by InterHealth organization headed by Dr. Nicola Bird can produce to our nation what is actually happening on the ground at this time. So I invite you to just walk with me as we look at a few recommendations, because I was told 5 minutes, a few recommendations that came out of that same situational analysis. And they are under various headings, for example, legal and policy framework, survival rights, developmental rights, protection rights. Now, first and foremost, under the legal and policy framework, the first dot or the first concern raised there was prohibit the use of corporal punishment of children in all settings, including the home, and abolish sentences of whipping and the imprisonment for juveniles. I'm quite sure many of us listening to our current affairs would be aware that there's a public discussion now on corporal punishment, especially in our schools. So why wasn't that recommendation implemented? Hence the need for a project like this to address those gaps and discrepancies which continue to prey on the lives of our children in Antigua and Barbuda. Let us look briefly at protection rights. Under protection rights, we are looking at how young persons, and we're looking at children throughout up to a particular age, who, according to our laws of Antigua and Barbuda, can access health care by themselves from 16 years old. However, if that 16-year-old is to access treatment for whatever ailment they might be experiencing, they must be accompanied by an adult. Antigua and Barbuda signed on to the Convention on the Rights of the Child in 1991 and ratified that convention in 1993. So by virtue of signing on to that convention, of course, within the ambit of our Constitution, we can see right away that a child of a particular age is being denied a particular right when it comes to accessing health. Let us go back a bit to the legal and policy framework. And I am very, very interested in the corporal punishment and the juvenile justice. I must hasten to add, however, that our government has been working feverishly throughout the years to address both child rights, child abuse, and to put into place policy frameworks and laws to address the situation with the hope that over time we will see a definite decrease in what is happening. We look at the statistics that were given earlier by Ms. Brenda Carrott, but we also need to take into consideration of the indirect form of violence that children experience. Let us look at domestic violence, what's happening in the home. So while the child may not be experiencing direct physical violence, which is what most people tend to focus on, the child is in an environment where they're exposed to emotional and psychological violence on a regular basis. And so this project is aiming to capture all of those spaces where children, through no fault of their own, are being exposed to different types of violence, both in the home and in the school. It is the hope of INTERARTS Foundation through this project, the city's AB, that this project pathways will be able to identify and address and recommend different pathways so that our children over time will experience less violence. I also would like to say that I am sitting here representing INTERARTS Foundation as the implementing partner. I am very happy that we have this opportunity to share with the wider society of Antigua and Barbuda what civil society organizations can achieve when they work together. This project is being done with a consortium. IntraHealth organization is partnering with 2 other organizations. So that looks also at the collaborative effort of our different organizations and how we can meaningfully utilize the resources that we have to address any of the social, cultural challenges that we face in Antigua and Barbuda. So I would like to close off by once again highlighting the recommendations of that situational analysis under the following headings: legal and policy framework, survival rights, developmental rights, and protection rights. I take this opportunity in congratulating IntraHealth organization, Dr. Bird and her team, in taking this bold step forward as a sub-grantee, and we do look forward to positive outcomes. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nurse Rong, for giving us some exposure and some background in terms of some of the key areas in which you feel that sub-focus needs to be given on during this important process. And I'm sure that the project manager will take away your concerns and will seek to address them as best as possible. And on that note, I will actually like to now introduce the project manager, Dr. Nicola Bird, As I mentioned before, she is the Executive Director of Integrated Health Outreach, and she will be speaking about the key partners briefly, areas of focus, and what has been done so far regarding this project and next steps for the project. Dr. Nicola Bird.
Thank you, Ms. Carrick, for the introduction, and Nurse Wong for that incredible opening. And again, we're very privileged to have this opportunity to be on this project. I will also just acknowledge that we have been funded by the European Instrument for Democracy and Human Rights and the European Union, where the project, of course, is in partnership with the Daisy Days AB and implemented by INTERARTS and the University of the West Indies. So we want to express our gratitude and appreciation for this opportunity, which we take as a great privilege, and we have a strong commitment to this project because it's not just, it means a lot to us. It comes from our heart. It's something that we're very passionate about and invested in. And so it's certainly for the organization and the partners, a passion project. So as Nurse Wong indicated, it is a consortium of organizations, Integrated Health Outreach, which I oversee, and Christian Union Church and Social and Environmental Alliance. And as a team, we're working very hard, and Chita represents Social and Environmental Alliance, SEA, and you will soon meet Pastor Karen Germain, who is representing Christian Union Church. And together, we're committed to bringing the main goal of what we're doing together as a team is to bringing this message about child rights and child abuse awareness to the community, and to not just bring the awareness about what constitutes child abuse and child rights, but also resources that are available and how we can be invested as a community to advocate for the vulnerable youth and children under 18, how we can advocate, and how we can all be involved in the protection, because child abuse and child awareness and protecting our children is everybody's business, because it impacts all of us, and all of us can take a stance, and all of us can have a voice. So far in the project, and I will say that the project will be, and the funding rather, not the commitment to the project, will be ending at the end of February. And through this time, we will be working to reach out to communities with awareness. So far we have worked in schools and communities, faith-based groups, youth groups, in terms of information. So we've created 2 PowerPoints with the information, and we have already done training with the counselors for the public secondary schools through the partnership with the Ministry of Education. And so we have gratitude that we've been approved to work in the schools to bring this awareness. We have also worked in presented this content in different churches, Christian Union Church being one, and we've had stellar attendance. We've also worked with different youth groups. We have gone into Otter's Comprehensive and presented to 2 youth groups. We've gone into other youth groups, and we have an agenda and we've scheduled many more. So we're committed and to going out into communities. We're also doing train the trainer. We're training other qualified persons to take this message out into the community. So we're working with the counselors to bring to take the message into their schools, and with the knowledge products that we have, which is the PowerPoints and any information that they then can present this to their teachers, to their youth, and the understanding and the knowledge about the impact, not child rights, the impact of child abuse. And what we do know is child abuse has severe impact. Children don't just get over it. It has lifelong consequences, emotionally, mentally, physically, economically, on every level. And so we want this awareness to be brought forward. and we're providing information on the resources. Mrs. Charles will speak in a moment about that, further about that as well. And so the next steps would just to be continuing to utilize all our time to really mobilize our communities so that we can, so that we don't just give a voice to this issue, this very, very serious issue and problem in society, but we also, mobilize our communities to take action and to advocate for the protection of children and youth in our society, and also to create more resources to preventive actions to support families and communities. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Dr. Bird, for shedding some light as to how you are progressing with getting the information out there that is needed. And I'm trusting that, this is, as you said, is just going to be a start, and that even after the end of this project, those persons with whom you have been able to touch base and make a connection to, that they're able to continue to advocate for child rights and against child abuse in Antigua and Barbuda. On that note, I would like to introduce Fiona Charles Richards, Acting Director, Family and Social Services Division of the Ministry of Social Transformation, Human Resource Development, and the Blue Economy. So Mrs. Charles Richards should be able to give us a pretty good assessment of child rights and child abuse in Antigua and Barbuda, and maybe to, if she can, if it's possible, relate them back to some of the key areas that Nurse Wong was focusing on, when she spoke about the legal and policy framework, the protection rights, developmental rights, and survival rights. If she can enlighten us a little bit as to the status, and if you have maybe even any latest statistics or figures that you can share in terms of what is currently happening. As we note, the information in the situational analysis is critical and it's crucial, but some of the statistics are not the latest statistics. So whatever you may have that you're able to share with us to spread deeper light on this concerning issue. So the floor is handed over. Remember to unmute, please, Fiona.
Good afternoon, everyone. It is a pleasure to be here as part of this project in terms of its importance. And I can give some information as it relates to what was mentioned earlier. In 2016, both the Child Care and Adoption Act and the Child Justice Act were implemented in Antigua to highlight the issues that were mentioned earlier, and to, of course, make some adjustments. Children, the age of responsibility is moved from 10 to 12. Actually from 7 to 12, because we were one of the countries in the Caribbean who had along with several others, who had a very low age of responsibility. So that has been adjusted. As a result of the Child Justice Act of 2015 as well, we would have seen a situation where children no longer go to prison unless it is within a particular schedule as to what had happened. The aspect would be that once it's a particular schedule, they are either diverted or they go to the juvenile detention facility, which is the boys training school. However, if it's issues such as murder, then that is an entirely different aspect of responsibility. And so we see that shifting throughout throughout the years. We are supported by OECS as it relates to the Juvenile Justice Reform Project. That would have been provided some funding for us within the juvenile justice. Whereas in the last 2 years or so, we would have created varying programs in terms of facilitating rehabilitation and diversion. Projects by which we are hoping to get off the ground after, well, when COVID settled down a bit. But as it relates to some of those projects, the mentorship project would have been launched this week. We have about 17 mentors in training. And when that is done, then they'll be responsible for some of the children that we have in the juvenile justice system and those in need of care and protection. As it relates to the aspect of the Child Care and Adoption Act of 2015, we would have drafted a policy for the National Child Care and Protection Policy. We have also drafted our regulations as it relates to that policy. And of course, those we're hoping to have implemented this year. In addition to that, the adoption board was formed as a result of the Child Care and Adoption Act of 2015, which resulted in at least 10 adoptions being facilitated between 2016 to 2018. And we are now in the process of at least completing 20 more. So, and it would be the aspect in which we would prefer, in that a child goes into a family environment as opposed to institutionalized care. And so as a result of that as well, we're seeking to strengthen foster care to limit the whole idea of institutionalized care. So there has been significant changes in terms of policies, in terms of things that are seeking to be implemented in terms of protecting our children. We have seen an increase in neglect and abuse, especially during COVID. We saw numbers such as 83 children being neglected during COVID. And of course, we would have had about 25 sexual abuse cases being reported to the department. Now, let's be clear, the department functions in terms of caring for children in need of care and protection, in that we support children in terms of removing them either from the environment or getting the perpetrator removed from the environment, or placement in terms of different types of environments that is safe for them. We are not the persons who prosecute the cases. We support the children through those processes. That falls in the hands of the DPP. So, and very often when we may be called in to support a child who may be given a testimony as a virtual complainant, but that is the limitation as to how far the department goes. As it relates to communication, that has been one of our weakest aspects in terms of getting the information out there, in terms of ensuring that persons understand what is mandatory reporting, ensuring that persons understand that they can also report anonymously. So this is a project will facilitate that aspect that has been extremely weak within the department in bringing more awareness within our communities about their rights, the rights of their children, and of course, the whole idea of reporting. I hope I have answered or covered most of the information that was required this afternoon.
Thank you very much, Fiona. I'm sure that what you have said has been quite enlightening to a number of persons in terms of some of the initiatives that are being undertaken by your ministry in regards to some of the legal frameworks and some of the other areas that Nurse Wong and Dr. Bird would have touched on. And so our final panelist today is going to be Pastor Karen Germain. She's of the Christian Union Church, and she's also a counselor within the school system. And what she's going to focus on will be her experience in school and in social groups as relates to child rights and child abuse, what she's seeing and feeling and hearing out there in her everyday work. So I pass it on now to Pastor Germain. 5 minutes, Pastor Germain, and then we open the floor to the media. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, everyone. Good afternoon to the listening Probably good afternoon to everyone. I'm Pastor Jermaine, and I'm also a counselor, as said. I will really want to say that this whole project is so timely and relevant. Wow, you know, so timely, so relevant, so needed. And so I really want to commend Dr. Bird and the rest of the team, Mrs. Wong and the rest of the team, everyone, you know, that it's really timely, it's needed, it's necessary. And so I really want to just address the, you know, as I interact out there, as I interact, basically just giving a little, what should I say, encouragement to, and reminders and to the parents or adults out there who are entrusted with the young people, children, that even more so in this pandemic time, prevention. As we're looking at rights, yes, and we're looking at that rights of being to be protected, to be safe, rights to an education, you know, prevent down the lines of preventative, down the lines of proper supervision. As we think of, you know, we're on a shift system now within our schools. We are some schools this morning, afternoon, just to go through the, you know, suit the protocols, as well as every other day. And even as we think of all this and so on, parents are back out to work and some may not be working, but just want to just encourage the parents out there as we think of that safeguarding, that you know, ensuring that your child is safe, being supervised, properly supervised, and not only a stranger could you know, we're looking at child abuse can harm your child, but also someone who is close to the family. So I just want to just throw out there to the parents, appeal out there to as we're thinking down the lines of child rights to be safe, safeguarded, to be protected, you know, proper supervision out there. I want to really, that is key. Another thing that I would like to stress on is also communication. Keep the lines of communications open between the parent and the child as we're thinking about abuse. So if in the event anything, you know, whatever is happening, whatever, you know, that door is open, that communication system, a good communication system where, you know, that voice, the child's voice can be heard, be listened to. Or very often as parents and as adults, we may say, you know, you listen to me, but they also have a voice. And as we're thinking of their rights and their, you know, they have a voice. They do have a voice. And so keep the lines of communication open so, you know, they can be heard. So if anything is happening, you know, they can feel comfortable to say something, you know, so that is very important. It's key, you know, just kind of think about it. If something has happened that not only a one event, but continues for years because, you know, no, the communication line was never there. It's not open. It's not a good communication system. And also know your child. Thirdly, know your child. Know the children in your care. Know them. And especially for parents, know the child. So if there's you know, the changes, see how they cope with things, see how they deal with things, see how they react to things. And then if you notice some changes that are happening and so on, you can say, okay, some kind of red flag happening there. So, you know, when you know the child, you can then, as we're thinking about child abuse and rights and safeguard, yes, knowing the child, you are better able, you're in a better position to pick up, you know, hey, this is a red flag, something is happening here. And you can, you know, you can talk it out, you can get to it, something is happening here, you know. So is those are the key things that I want to look at. I want to just say proper supervision, communication, good communication system, knowing the child, and the other thing I would like to really stress on, the impact. All this that we are trying as stakeholders here, to do, and we're pushing by the grace of God to do, is to basically show the impact. Some persons, you know, don't recover. Some persons do, but then, you know, even with help and counseling, and of course, faith-based prayer, yes, people can get the help, and they do get help. But what are we saying? Some scars, the impact, even with some adults you may end up dealing with out there within the community, you realize the indifference and all that is because, you know, when you get to the bottom, sorry, that it's, you know, they too would have gone through that cycle of abuse and child abuse, and the impact it had on them. And then now it's not just them, it's now their child and the society and everything else. It's just a whole domino effect. And so we are really pushing, as you know, faith-based and everyone else who is you know, part of this project, that we are pushing for that awareness, we're pushing for solutions, we're pushing to tap into the resources available. We're just pushing because the impact, the flashbacks, the, you know, look, you know, you could be going so well right now, and then even I've seen people, even after, you know, as a pastor, as a counselor, even after they've grown, they're adults, you know, and have gone on, children, all that, flashbacks, not just so you can imagine the children, if adults still have the flashback of what has happened to them as a child. And so the impact is so, oh my goodness, the impact of these adverse childhood experiences on the children, it's deep. It is really deep. And so you can imagine if this still affects an adult, and I'm closing there, you can imagine how it impacts, how it affects the lives of our young ones, the delicate ones. And so that is the push I want to give. This is that we will get on board out there, and we will, you know, listen, we will work together, and we will bring awareness out there and get on board. It's everybody's business. It is being said, it takes a village to raise a child. It will take all of us in Antigua and Barbuda. It will take us to get on board, to see, you know, our children. You know, there's a part of a song that I always hold dear, an independence song. We have a nation to build, and we have a country to mold. And so this is one of the ways that we can build and mold our nation, when we tap into helping our children out there who needs the help. Thank you.
Pastor Jermaine, I want to thank you so much for what you have said there. And this is a clear demonstration, I think, that from all of the speakers that have come on board, that you can see that the whole issue of child rights and child abuse is a multifaceted issue that has to be approached from many different angles. It's not just one approach or one layer. There are several different layers to this particular issue and to this surge. From what was pointed out from Nurse Wong, to what has been pointed out by Mrs. Charles Richards, to what has been pointed out by Pastor Jermaine, and the work that Dr. Nicola Bird is doing. So it takes really all hands on deck. And as Pastor Jermaine says, we have a, what's it? A nation to build and a country to mold. And everybody has to be a part of this whole process. And even though what we're doing now, it may be just a small dent in a very, very wide ocean, it's a start, and it's a critical start. And I think it's something to be admired to see these NGOs coming on board and actually being able to support the government that has an overarching responsibility for these topics, and being able to support them in this endeavor. So without any further ado, and so that we can try and stick within our time frame of no more than an hour, we now open the floor to the members of the press. I see that some people have not turned up, I don't think. So whichever member of the press would like to go first, I'm seeing on my board here, Mr. Williams, and I'm seeing Mr. Aparicio. We can take up to 3 questions, at least initially, and we can see how it goes from there.
All right, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Orville Williams. I'm a news producer with the Antigua Observer. I have two questions. My first question is for Nurse Wang. I don't know if she's still on, but I'll just go ahead. I'm assuming she is. In my experience, some of the hardest social traits to reform, particularly within the Caribbean, have a strong cultural foundation. So whether it be colorful language, trying to get kids to speak a little bit better, not using colorful language, the attitudes to authority, or the attitudes to gender norms, for example. So with regard to the majority of the population here in Antigua and Barbuda, understanding child rights and child abuse and adjusting their attitudes towards these when necessary, is the challenge primarily a lack of adequate resources, or is it really a reluctance on the part of the majority to move away from what they know to simply be part of the culture?
Thank you very much for asking that question, Mr. Williams. I more or less expected that it will be put on the table. We tend to use the term culture in our everyday language, and everyone seems to have a different understanding when we say culture, what it is we're talking about. While there is no really broad-based definition for culture, culture is who we are, what we do, what we wear, what we drink, how we think, how we behave. Why do I say that? There are times when certain things will happen and you would hear somebody say, oh, that have to be an Antigua, or that have to be a Jamaican, or that have to be a Guyanese, or that have to be a Trinidadian. Why? Because the way they spoke, how they dressed, and what things are synonymous with the country from which they come. As you would have heard, I in my opening remarks, I spoke about the focus of INTERARTS. And if I delineated 5 points, 4 of them are based on culture. Reluctance, I would want to say, yes, because change is a process. And many times in the cycle of change, there is a relapse or reverting to what we feel comfortable with. But does being comfortable mean that it is right? Now, from my personal perspective, in my prayer book as an Anglican, there's a particular prayer which says, Lord, give our leaders wisdom that there may be peace and justice on the earth. When we look, for example, let's look at one particular scripture. Spare not the rod and spoil the child. What does that mean? It means, or it connotes, that every time a child does something which the parent does not agree with or is not part of the culture, the child comes in for a whooping. I am aware of a particular school where a particular teacher was appointed to carry out the whipping. Now, if one of the recommendations in that assessment, that situational analysis that was done under the legal and policy framework, the first dot in the recommendation speaks to prohibiting the use of corporal punishment of children. Now, when we punish the child, we are saying to the child, this is how you will be corrected. And so the child internalizes that behavior and takes it to the school and takes it into his or her adult life. So are we surprised when after school there's fighting and police have to come in and youth intervention has to come in. We are teaching them that in the home. For the adult population, there is I think it's Pastor Jermaine spoke about the pushback. There's the pushback. The guys want to be seen as a guy. This is a man thing. So they're not washing and hanging out any clothes because that is a woman thing. And so they are unconsciously passing that message on to the son. Son, this kind of work is not for you. This is for your mother, and this is for your sister. I recently saw an SBA for a child because we do assist with printing and so on for some parents who really don't have that resource. And when you look at a parent and the roles of the parent, the mother's roles were to cook and to wash and to clean. The father had one role, and that was to cook and nothing else. So, Mr. Williams, from my experience, I see it as a reluctance. Where do we stand and how do we want to move forward? We keep saying we want to see a change. We want to see a change. But change starts with us, right where we are. When the guys are at the side of the street, regardless of their age, the cop calls, and when the cop calls are not responded to, what follows? What follows? Is that a part of our culture? Is that the way we want to go forward in this 21st century? We have resources. We may not have unlimited resources, but I do know that the resources that we have, we are utilizing them well. I know that because we are part of partnerships and collaboration, not only with civil society, but with some government ministries as well. So the resources are being drawn from almost everywhere that we can think about. So why is there that reluctance? When projects like this is saying to everyone, look, this is what is happening. This is what is happening on the ground. And the other thing too, sometimes when I go in the media and I say, well, look, this is a situation which has come to us. And the first question I asked, did that happen here in Antigua? Was it an Antiguan involved? So we tend to separate ourselves from certain things, but we are happy to associate with other things. Life is a mixture of what is happening. We have to start the change. I must say, however, there has been a noticeable shift because not only what was formerly called the Welfare Department, which is now FSSD, but also some faith-based organizations and community-based organizations are getting together and saying, well, look, we don't like what's happening with our children, we don't like what's happening in our community, and we need to make a change. So, Mr. Williams, I concur that we do have resources. Like I said, we may not have unlimited resources, but we have resources which can be utilized gainfully through partnerships with government, partnerships with INTERARTS and other funding agencies, which can help us to address the national response when it comes to child rights and child abuse in Antigua and Barbuda. Let's make the change together. Thank you.
Thank you. I think, Mr. Williams, you said you had a second question, or Mr. Aparicio. Was it Mr. Williams?
Yes, I have another question. So this would be my second and final. This question is for Dr. Bird, but I want to piggyback on Pastor Karen's earlier advice, with a short story. I have a friend, let's say his name is Joe, two friends, Joe and George. Joe has a small daughter. And Joe was giving me a bit of casual advice on how important it is to establish a healthy line of communication with children or with your children. So Joe was telling me that he and George were hanging out with his young daughter, and the daughter was, I guess, behaving a little bit exuberant as children normally do. And George, who has this authority based on his friendship with Joe, he gave her a little bit of playful spanking. And what shocked both of these young men were the response that the daughter had based on prior conversations that Joe would have had with her. The daughter remarked, I mean, at the top of her voice, "Stop, don't touch me on my private parts." That's what they said that the daughter said. This little girl is barely 3 years old, if I'm remembering correctly. So what the point I'm making is, a lot of the times this advice, if you give it to children, they normally do not need the authority or the go ahead from the adults to be assertive and to take charge of their bodies, their space, and such. So the question for Dr. Bird is, you spoke earlier of activities where you went into a few schools to get the relevant messages directly to the youth. The question is, do you think it would be easier or more effective, rather, for programs like this to begin to target the youth primarily versus adults, since the youth are more impressionable and would likely be more willing to challenge the culture or the status quo, so to speak?
Please unmute, Dr. Bird.
Sorry, thank you. Yes. So I was saying, thank you for the question, and it's certainly a very layered question. So I don't, as Ms. Carrot said earlier, that a topic like this, an issue like this is very multi-layered, and coming from it from multiple levels is really the best way, we think, to approach it. So yes, we absolutely agree that the youth need to be given a voice, and they need to be informed and knowledgeable about what their resources are, what's available to them, what their rights are, and what constitutes child abuse, so that they can have resources. So, but knowledge also needs to go back out into families and into communities, because children, when you gave the example of your friend with his daughter, that child, sounds like she would come from an environment where she's allowed to speak. But if a child is being violated, abused in a vulnerable situation, they're not empowered. Their voice is not heard. They don't get to speak. And even if they do, there's no result to that voice. So they're disempowered. And that, of course, becomes internalized, where they learn to think that they're not worth anything. They don't mean anything. So they don't know how to advocate for themselves. And children who are being abused, or like sexually abused children, for instance, are typically groomed so that they are threatened in a way. So, adults and people in positions of power also certainly need to be informed, because they have a voice to also advocate for children and to protect them, and to fight for those who are vulnerable. So while youth can learn to stand for themselves, the adults are the ones who have the resources as well, and the capacity, more in positions of power, to make change and to make decisions. And when it comes to cultural norms, and culture is a mindset as well, and culture is fluid. I mean, if we just think of culture as a static event or a static state, it is not. Change is always happening. If we look at ourselves 5 years ago, 10 years ago, 20, 30, 50 years ago, we see a change in culture. So I think knowledge and awareness. So part of our program, a lot of our program, is what constitutes child abuse and the impact of it. And we know that when we go out and talk about the layers of impact on brain development, psychological, physical, emotional, all these layers, it changes the landscape of what you understand. You don't just think, oh, children get over it. So that knowledge can really empower people to take action. And so that's the whole goal of it. It's to acknowledge that we create change.
Thanks, Dr. Bird. But I think the reason I'm asking this is because this is what we've been hearing for a while, and it's almost blatant. We know that obviously adults are the ones that are more likely to not more likely, that we've been told that they're more likely to disseminate the messages. They have the capacity more so than kids. They have the authority more so than kids who have to do basically what the adults say in the homes and so forth. But it would be an innovative thing, I think, to create programs that target the youth primarily, because while the adults may be the ones that have more capacity to effect change, on the flip side, they are often the ones that are the purveyors of these negative attitudes towards child rights and child abuse. So it's more traditional, I believe. It's like going down this route. We target the adults. Yes, the children are going to get the messages, but like you said, children often, in a lot of cases, are not given the authority to speak, given the authority to dictate what happens to them and their bodies. But
right.
These are often the ways that you challenge what they learn in the home. So whether they're being talked down to in the home, if when they go to school, if on the billboards, if on the TV, they are seeing messages that empower them, I think it would be a very effective counter to what they're facing.
But Mr. Williams, I am saying that we are doing that, but we're not just singularly only targeting youth. We are 100% moving the youth. We've already reached out to youth. We're targeting youth, we're going out, but we are trying to approach it from every angle for protection, because we think that if we're trying to have through this project as far reach as we can, we're going into every community and we're going into the youth, to everyone. So, and we are moving towards increasing empowerment, showing the rights, showing them resources that they can take, how they can support each other, how they can take action, how they can advocate. We're absolutely providing that message, but we're not singularly. But that is a primary focus of this, to reach out to youth. But I guess I was answering when you said, why are we not just singularly targeting youth? And I'm saying we're making it holistic because we want as much reach as we can. So for instance, when we go to the counselors, they will then be able to take that position and reach their students and bring that message to their students. But we are holistic. So yes, I 100% agree with you. Our goal is to give voice to youth, to children, but we are taking a holistic, but that is the priority. The youth are the priority, and that is our main focus. So I think we are on the same page, but it's not just singular. We're doing as much outreach as we can.
Okay, sorry I think I'm taking up the time, so I'll pass on now. But I just wanted to make the point that I didn't mean singularly. When I say right. Primarily, I mean if you have a budget of 100,000, this is just my view. In my experience, I think $80,000 should go towards messages geared at empowering the youth, rather than vice versa. So I didn't mean singularly, like just targeting right. the youth alone, but just to place more of the focus on them, so to speak.
And we are.
Go ahead. Probably move on from this so Mr. Aparicio can get to speak. But I'm hearing what is the debate going on between Mr. Williams and Dr. Bird. And I'm wondering if Ms. Fiona Charles Richards might have any say in terms of a governmental approach, because as she mentioned, communications is something that they're looking at very seriously. But in terms of what Mr. Orville Williams is here saying, that a lot of the messaging needs to go out to the youth directly, I was wondering what would be the position of the ministry in that regard, and what approach the ministry would take regarding something similar to what Mr. Williams has just said.
It would be the same holistic approach that is being indicated, because the truth is, although yes, our children are being impacted, but it also has to be that we're looking at it from a community basis, and a community involves the persons who live in the community, the parents, the friends, the classmates, the church groups, the community groups, the children. It has to be holistic. Yes, there are going to be some that are scaled down so that children can understand, of course, and of course, persons who are particular educational level or level of understanding can also understand. But it has to be that we are engaging the entire community. That's just how I see it, and that's the stance that we're taking.
Okay, thank you, Mrs. Fiona Charles Richards. So, Mr. Williams, that's it. Mr. Aparicio, would you like to pose any questions to the panelists?
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Yes, I would like to. Let me start with
afternoon,
Mrs.
Mr.
Fiona Charles
Aparicio.
Richards.
Yes.
So, Mrs. Charles Richards, looking at the COVID-19 pandemic, we're about a year and a few months into the global pandemic itself. Anecdotally, have you seen any evidence of a potential increase in child abuse and neglect over the last year and a half or so?
I would have indicated earlier that yes, we would have seen an increase in neglect and child abuse in terms of sexual, more so than in comparison to 2018. So our numbers would have started to rise in 2019, but were at a different level in 2020. Neglect also rose significantly. We had about 82 reports of issues of neglect. Yeah, and we would have also seen about 25 in sexual abuse.
Okay, is there any concern that people might not be reporting, or do you think we're at the general level you'd expect us to be at?
I think last year when most persons were under that confined space and of course lockdown, that more persons were reporting. So for the space of last year, yes, I would say that reporting has increased. However, I do believe that there's still a lot of situations not being reported because persons are still either afraid. There are times when it's actually some of their peers that are reporting on their behalf, but not necessarily adults. So we do have their peers also and our youth also making reports on the behalf of their friends.
Okay, my final question, with regards to the enforcement of laws to protect the sanctity of children, essentially. Do you, from your office's perspective, is that actually being done?
I would like to see more enforcement. And when I say I would like to see more enforcement, I would like to see more persons who physically harm their children go through the system. There are times when we have to make an impression onto the police officers that we would like it to be charged, as opposed to if we make the report to the police, we actually have to be following it to see how far it went. And I really don't think that is where my manpower should be. I think it should be a situation where this is our laws, it has been broken, and it should be implemented. So very often that sometimes presents a challenge.
Okay, thank you. That's it for me.
Okay, so I think I'm not sure if there's anybody else on board from the media. Last call, anybody else from the media on board?
No, but I would just like to say one last thing. Sorry to interrupt, Ms. Carrot. I just wanted to, that we want to give the resource the numbers. We put them in the chat. So Ms. Charles may speak about how, where reporting can be done. So I think that would be just a good wrap up if we can do that. Ms. Charles, yeah, Charles.
Okay,
Richards,
as Mr. Carrot has indicated in the chat, the numbers to call are 562-1508 or 1509 or 464-3531.
Okay, so everybody got that? So I think this has been a really good discussion and a good kickoff to the whole public awareness campaign that we're about to embark upon. So we're hoping that, in the media, we'll hear more generalized information going out there, not just specifically targeted actions that Dr. Bird is presently doing. And so on that score, Mr. Adlai Carrot. Mr. Carrot? Mr. Carrot has disappeared.
Yes, hold on. I'm here. No, I have
Okay.
disappeared. I just had to turn off my camera for a while because the other person is passing
Okay.
in and out of my room.
Okay.
Okay.
So-
First of all, are there any other interventions by anybody else? Anybody else want to make any other further points? Any other questions by the media?
No, I don't have a question, but I would just like to ask if the if a link to the audio or a copy of the audio could be emailed to me kindly for this presentation.
It most certainly will. All persons who are prepared today will get a link to the entire recording.
All right, thank you very much, Mr. Carrot.
Okay. Okay.
Taking a picture.
Pardon me?
Sorry, Nurse Wong?
Yes, I have tried to snap some pictures, Nurse Wang. So when this is over, I will see how they came out. And once the pictures are available, you will certainly receive them.
So
Okay.
do we have one where we have all the participants with the camera on, as many with the camera
Well,
on and snap that?
I tried to get a couple. Let
Yeah,
me even have a chance to
let
do
me
it.
do it again. Okay, I'm trying again. It's the first time I'm actually taking pictures from a Zoom session, so we just have to see how it comes out. Okay.
Right.
Well, I think this has been a very important engagement, and I first of all want to thank the members of the media, Mr. Aparicio.
Mrs. Quinn is waiting to be let in, but we're about to finish, but you can let her in. Mr. Carrot, you heard?
Yeah, I did let her in.
Yeah. Go ahead, Mr. Carrot.
Yeah.
Basically joined by Dr. Jackie
Good
Quinn.
afternoon, Dr. Jackie Quinn.
Good afternoon. I am so sorry to be late.
That's okay.
I was teaching a class online
Okay.
and tried as quickly as possible to wrap up to join you.
Well, at least thank you for joining us anyway. All right, we're about to wrap up now, but the session has been recorded.
Yes.
So I will send the link to the entire recording for you, so you'll be able to hear exactly what happened.
Yes, thanks. And I did get the notes as well, so I do have access to that. But please accept my apologies.
Quite so.
Accepted, Dr. Quinn. And if there are any questions based on your listening to the recording that you may pose to any of the panelists, we are willing to pass those questions on for them to be answered on your behalf. Okay?
Well, thank you. Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Or Dr. I know there's time over, but if the others have
That's
to leave,
okay.
they need,
That's okay, Dr. Bird. Go ahead.
yeah, because the other media, if you have any questions that you even have now, even without, we're open to answering them. If you have any entry questions that you wanted to address, even without having heard the whole.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Dr. Quinn.
Feel free.
Curious as to what sorts of ideas you had in terms of collaborating with governments and with some of the NGOs in charting the way in this child advocacy strategy that you are proposing. Because I believe that your platform or your organization will be working with some of the other organizations. I see Alexandrina Wong is here. So I know Women Against Rape will partner with you or will strategize with you. I just wanted to get an idea of the kind of partnerships that you are forging with other organizations, be they governmental or non-governmental, because this is important, groundbreaking work that you are doing. I want you to understand that.
Oh, thank you. And we feel the same way. So yes, we are, the project is a consortium of NGOs, Integrated Health Outreach. I'm the Executive Director, Nicola Bird, and we're partnering with Social and Environmental Alliance, SEA, and Christian Union Church. we are the consortium under this funding body to, dedicated to this project, but we are definitely not stopping with us. We have met Mrs. Fiona Charles Richards is a panelist here as well. And so we have met with her department as well as others from the social transformation. And we've also been working with multiple faith groups and will be continuing to work. So we're reaching out across the nation to work with faith groups, their youth groups and their members. And so we're presenting in the faith groups, for instance, to both members and their youth groups. And we're just doing as much outreach as we can, including communities and any groups that we can. So we're the ones leading the project, but we certainly are. We've also partnered with the Ministry of Education as well, and we have approval to go into the school. So today, for instance, we did a training session with the counselors, and then there will be the trainer where they will also be able to take. We created PowerPoints. They will also be able to take this information into the schools, to their professional development day, to their youth groups, and to their students. So we're trying to also do the trainer so that we can have dedicated persons or groups motivated to and to move forward. And we've been having a tremendous response at each presentation. Thank you.
And I just wanted to also, just quickly, because maybe you might have addressed it before, to ask whether or not your communication and visibility campaign that you plan to mount for this project will address things like the corporal punishment, which is quite au courant at this time, bullying, violence in schools, because you have peer-on-peer violence, fighting and weapons being brought to school and so on, body shaming, some of the things that children face on a daily basis in both the educational environment or the community environment or even in the home. So perhaps one of you could address that very quickly for me. I'm sorry that I've taken you off course.
No, that's fine.
Okay, it's quite okay.
That's what we're happy to answer. So when we're doing our seminars and our presentations, the main focus is on helping, indicating what the rights of children are. Most people are not aware of that. And so we have a youth program, one for the youth and one for those 18 and over. And then the impact, what constitutes child abuse, the impact of child abuse. So under those, we do cover violence and all the things, the rage and all those things that you're talking about. But our main, and then the resources available to support for reporting, and so where help can be sought and to take action. And so where our focus is on those main areas and what action can be taken to create change, so that we work towards a solution and to get the community more involved and invested in advocating to protect children and for the youth to increase their voice and so that they can be heard and to remove the shame and the silence.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Quinn, for your questions. And I see Mr. Orwell Williams has left and Mrs. Fiona Richards did indicate that she also had to leave. So I just want to thank each of you for attending and for expressing your thoughts, asking your questions, right? This is a very important engagement. It's a small step, right? But is a very important step as well. To the members of the media and also to the other panelists, as I mentioned previously, a copy of the recording, the link to the recording will be sent to you. And beginning tomorrow and continuing for the next week or so, the panelists who are here and representing the various NGOs will be going out to various media houses, right, to continue the communications campaign of public awareness and so on. And the media personnel who are here, right, feel free to contact any of the panelists, right, at any time. I don't believe they will have any objections if we share their contact details with you. So at any time you could contact them and you could ask questions, you could share your ideas and your recommendations. Mr. Orville Williams in particular asked some very thoughtful questions and also made a number of particular recommendations and so on. So I want to thank all of you for coming. I want to thank all the panelists. I want to thank Mistress Fiona Charles Richards, even though she has left, right? Because we thought it was important that a member of the Ministry of Social Transformation be present, because this project can only be effective if both the ministry and the NGOs work together, right? There must be a solid partnership in order to make it viable and to make it truly effective. So we're very happy to have Sina here today. I also noted that at the beginning, and Dr. Quinn also made reference to it, the timely, the fact that corporal punishment, right, is now an important issue, has become an important topic. And I heard the Prime Minister indicated that there will be public consultations. And in fact, I believe the ministries of social transformation and of education will be tasked in organizing these consultations to get the public's perception, views, and recommendations on corporal punishment. It's going to be a very important, a very interesting the discussion over the next couple of weeks, over the next couple of months, and so on. And I'm sure not only will the Ministry of Social Transformation, but all of these NGOs who are here will be called upon to play their part and to give their thoughts and ideas as we go forward. To the media, we depend upon you, right? Those of you who are here today, thank you very much, right? Because it is by you, through you, that you will be one of the main mediums by which this communications, the messages will be put forward, right? And as we all know, there is a culture of silence when it comes to child abuse here in Antigua, not only here in Antigua, but throughout the Caribbean. And we are dependent on you to put forward the information and to really go out there and use all your platforms, right, to spread the word about the importance of child rights and to give the information on child abuse, what is really happening here in Antigua. Let me just repeat again the numbers, the very important numbers, right, to report child abuse, right? 562-1508 or 562-1509 and also 464-3531, right? It is important that these numbers be highlighted because, you know, and this is 24 hours reported, right? Anybody can call these numbers 24 hours. And the persons who call do not have to identify themselves. That is very important, right? All they need to do is to provide details of where one of the field officers or social workers will go to address the issue. So thanks again, everyone. And we hope this is just the first stage of our engagement, and we look forward to having you again in the near future. Thanks, and be safe out there.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Nurse Wong. Thanks, Pastor Jermaine. Thanks, Dr. Quinn. Dr. Quinn, I left a message for you so you can respond back to me. All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye.